Hi class, let's now proceed with chapters 8 and 9 of your book. Starting off with chapter 8, which talks about sale by a non-owner or one having avoidable title. Where the seller is not the owner at the time of perfection, the contract of sale is valid. For ownership by seller at the time of perfection is not one of the requisites for subject matter. Where the seller is not the owner at the time of delivery, the buyer acquires no better title to the goods than the seller had. The remedy for the buyer in this case is rescission of the contract of sale with damages. If one buys the land of another to which the seller is supposed to have a good title, and in consequence of facts unknown to both parties the seller has in fact no title at all, equity will cancel the sale and cause the purchase money to be restored to the buyer, putting both parties in status quo. But there are cases when a non-owner's act of selling transfers title to the buyer, such as in a case of a co-owner who sells the entire co-owned property. Here, the sale is effective only as to his spiritual share, and will not affect the shares of the other co-owners who never gave their consent. Likewise, when a co-owner sells a specific portion of an unpartitioned co-owned property, such sale is not void, but it effectively transfers the seller's ideal share in the co-ownership. When a co-owner sells the land and does not turn over the respective share of the proceeds to the other co-owners, the proper action for the latter is partition of the entire property. Prior to partition, a sale of a definite portion of a common property requires the consent of all co-owners. Thus, at best, the agreement between the parties prior to partition is a contract to sell, not a contract of sale. Now let's talk about sale of lands under the torrent system. Every person dealing with a registered land may safely rely on the correctness of the certificate of title issued therefor. An innocent purchaser for value is one who purchases a titled land by virtue of a deed executed by the registered owner himself, not by a forged deed. Note that the defense of indefeasibility of torrent title is available to a sale of land, but not to a sale of properties situated therein. Note also that a person who deals with registered land through someone who is not the registered owner is expected to look beyond the certificate of title and examine all the factual circumstances thereof in order to determine if the vendor has the capacity to transfer any interest in the land. The courts may exercise its statutory power to make a sale effective. For instance, when a defeated party refuses to execute the deed of absolute sale in accordance with the judgment, the court may direct the act to be done at the cost of the disobedient party by some other person appointed by the court, and the act, when so done, shall have the like effect as if done by the disobedient party. Now let's say John stole goods from a merchant's store and sold them to Peter. Here, Peter acquired no title to the goods even though he purchased them for value and in good faith. Thus, the owner may still recover them. Now let's proceed with chapter 9, which talks about loss and deterioration, fruits and other benefits in a contract of sale. The rules on loss or deterioration of the things sold is not applicable to generic things, since generic things never perish. What is critical here is the effect of loss or deterioration of the thing sold after perfection bought before delivery. The general rule is that the risk of loss is borne by the seller under the rule of res perit domino. When the loss is by the fault of the seller, the buyer need not pay the price. When the loss is due to fortuitous event, the seller is excused from his obligation to deliver the thing, and the buyer is not obliged to pay the price. As to deterioration, if it is without the fault of the seller, then it is borne by the buyer. If it is through the fault of the seller, then the buyer may choose rescission or fulfillment of the contract with damages in either case. As to fruits or improvements, it shall pertain to the buyer from the point of perfection. So that's it for our review on chapters 8 and 9. Thank you for listening.